The wind howled across New Montana like a beast that never slept. Jake Morrison pulled his coat tighter as he walked through the snow toward his barn. The winter of 2847 was the worst anyone could remember. The cold bit through every layer of clothing, and the snow fell so thick that Jake could barely see his own fence posts. Inside the barn, 3 of his cattle lay dead. Their bodies were already frozen solid. Jake counted the living ones and felt his heart sink. Only 12 cows remained out of the 40 he had started the winter with. Food was running low, and the supply ship was not due for another 2 months. If the weather did not break soon, he and his family would starve. Jake heard a cry from the house and hurried back through the deep snow. His wife, Mary, was having her baby. The local doctor lived 3 days away, and the storm made travel impossible. Jake would have to help deliver the child himself. He had done it before with the cattle, but never with his own wife. Mary lay on their bed, her face pale and covered in sweat. She gripped his hand so hard he thought she might break his fingers. For 6 hours she labored while the storm raged outside. Jake melted snow for water and kept the fire burning. When the baby finally came, Jake wrapped him in the cleanest cloth he could find. The baby was small and blue. His breathing came in short, quick gasps. Jake held him up to the light and saw that something was wrong. The child's chest was shaped differently than normal babies. His fingers were longer and thinner. His eyes seemed too large for his face. Jake had seen enough stillborn calves to know when something was not right. Mary reached for her son with weak arms. Jake placed the baby in her hands and watched her face change from joy to worry. She could see it too. The baby's breathing was getting worse. His skin stayed blue no matter how warm they kept him. Jake walked to the medical scanner they kept, in the kitchen. It was an old model that could only do basic checks. He held the scanner over his son and waited for the reading. The small screen flickered and showed words that made his stomach turn cold. Life expectancy, less than 24 hours. Multiple system failures detected. He walked back to Mary and showed her the scanner reading. She began to cry and held the baby closer to her chest. Jake sat on the edge of the bed and put his arm around his wife. They both knew what frontier life demanded. Resources were too precious to waste on the weak. The baby would suffer and die anyway. It was better to end it quickly. "We can't keep him alive, Mary," Jake said quietly. "We don't have the medicine or the equipment. He'll just suffer." Mary shook her head and tears froze on her cheeks. "There has to be something we can do." Jake looked at his dying son and made the hardest choice of his life. "I'll take him outside. The cold will make it quick. He won't feel any pain." Mary screamed and clutched the baby tighter. Jake gently took his son from her arms. The baby's eyes opened for a moment and looked right at him. Then they closed again, and his breathing became even more shallow. Jake wrapped the baby in a thick blanket and walked outside into the storm. Behind the barn, where Mary could not see, he made a small nest in the snow. He placed his son there and covered him with the blanket. The wind was so cold that death would come in minutes, not hours. "I'm sorry, boy," Jake whispered. "The world is too hard for you." He walked back to the house and told Mary it was done. She turned away from him and would not speak. Jake sat by the fire and stared into the flames. Outside, the storm continued to rage. High above the planet, hidden in the clouds, a Zephyrian scout ship watched everything. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge and observed the human settlement below. His long, scaled fingers moved across the control panel as he recorded the scene. "Another example of human brutality," he said to his second officer. "They abandon their own young when they show weakness." The Zephyrian Empire had been studying human colonies for months. They wanted to understand how humans thought and felt before they began their invasion. Vextar had collected hundreds of recordings that showed human cruelty and selfishness. This would be another perfect example for their psychological warfare database. "Shall we continue monitoring, Commander?" asked the second officer. "Yes," Vextar replied. "I want to see how long the human takes to die. It will help us understand their pain tolerance." The scanner showed the baby's life signs getting weaker by the minute. Vextar watched with scientific interest as the human infant slowly froze to death. He made notes about the rate of decline and estimated time of death. To him, it was just another data point about human weakness. In the house below, Jake sat, in silence while Mary cried herself to sleep. The storm showed no signs of ending and the temperature continued to drop. Jake knew he had made the right choice, but it felt like something had died inside him too. The frontier demanded hard decisions, but that did not make them any easier to live with. Outside in the snow, the baby lay still under his blanket. His breathing was so faint that the medical scanners could barely detect it. The Zephyrian computers calculated that death would occur within the next hour. Commander Vextar prepared to file his report about another example of human callousness, but the storm was far from over, and neither Jake nor the aliens watching from above could predict what the morning would bring. In the vast darkness of space, forces were already in motion that would change everything. The baby in the snow was not just another casualty of frontier life. He was something much more important, though no one would understand that until it was almost too late. The wind continued to howl across New Montana, carrying with it the seeds of a future that none of them could imagine. 3 hours after Jake Morrison left his son in the snow, a lone rider appeared through the storm. Sam Rivers had been traveling for 2 days, looking for shelter from the worst blizzard he had ever seen. His horse was tired and both of them needed warmth and rest. When he saw the lights of the Morrison ranch, he guided his mount toward the buildings. Sam was a drifter who moved from settlement to settlement, helping where he could and never staying long in one place. He was tall and lean, with hands that showed years of hard work. His face was weathered by sun and wind, and his eyes held the kind of sadness that came from losing everything that mattered. He had lost his own family 5 years ago, when alien raiders attacked their homestead on the edge of human space. His wife Lisa and their 2 children had been killed while he was away hunting. Sam returned to find his house burned and his family dead. Since then, he had wandered the frontier, unable to settle down anywhere that reminded him of what he had lost. Sam tied his horse to the fence post and knocked on the Morrison door. Jake answered, his face showing the strain of the day's events. He looked at the stranger and nodded. "Storm's getting worse," Sam said. "Mind if I shelter my horse in your barn?" Jake stepped aside and let him in. "Help yourself to the barn. Coffee's on the stove if you want some." Sam thanked him and went back outside to tend to his horse. The barn was warmer than the open air, but not by much. He unsaddled his mount and gave her some of the hay from Jake's supply. The horse snorted and shook the snow from her mane. As Sam worked, he heard something that made him stop. It was faint, almost lost in the wind, but it sounded like crying. He listened carefully and heard it again. It was coming from behind the barn. Sam followed the sound through the deep snow. The crying was weak but steady, like a kitten that had been abandoned. When he found the source, his heart nearly stopped. There in the snow was a baby, wrapped in blankets and barely alive. "Jesus," Sam whispered. He picked up the infant and felt how cold the small body was. The baby's lips were blue and his skin felt like ice. But he was still breathing, still fighting to live. Sam's mind filled with anger and confusion. How could anyone leave a baby to die in the snow? He looked toward the house and saw Jake Morrison through the window. The man was sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. Sam wrapped the baby inside his own coat and marched to the house. He burst through the door without knocking. Jake looked up in surprise, then saw what Sam was carrying. "You left this baby to die," Sam said, his voice shaking with rage. Jake stood up slowly. "The boy's sick. He won't live more than a few hours anyway. It's better this way." "Better for who?" Sam demanded. "This child's got more fight in him than you do. He's been out there for hours and he's still alive." Mary Morrison sat up in bed and saw her son in the stranger's arms. She began to cry and reached out toward them. "My baby," she whispered. Sam looked at the medical scanner reading that Jake showed him. The machine said the baby would die, but Sam had seen enough of life to know that machines were often wrong. He had watched strong men die from small cuts and weak men survive terrible injuries. Life found a way when people gave it a chance. "What's his name?" Sam asked. "We didn't name him," Jake replied. "What's the point when he's going to die?" Sam felt his anger grow hotter. Every child deserves a name, even if they only live for a day. He looked down at the baby in his arms. The child's eyes opened and looked right at him. They were clear and alert, not the dull eyes of someone dying. Sam saw intelligence there and something else. The baby seemed to be studying him, learning about this new person who had found him. "I'm calling him Luke," Sam said, "and I'm taking him with me." Jake shook his head. "You'll just watch him die on the trail. At least here it would have been quick." "Maybe," Sam replied, "but maybe not. I've seen miracles before, and this boy feels like one." Mary Morrison struggled to get out of bed. She was weak from giving birth, but she managed to stand and walk over to Sam. She looked at her son and touched his small hand. "Take him," she said quietly. "If there's any chance he can live, take him." Jake started to protest, but Mary turned on him with fire in her eyes. "You made your choice, Jake Morrison. Now I'm making mine." Sam could see the pain in both their faces. They were good people caught in an impossible situation. The frontier demanded hard choices, but Sam had learned that sometimes the right choice was the hardest one to make. "There's a medical station 3 days north of here," Sam said. "If I can get him there, they might be able to help." 3 days through alien territory in this storm?" Jake asked. "You'll both die." Sam looked down at Luke again. The baby had stopped crying and seemed to be listening to their conversation. His breathing was still weak, but it was steady. Something about this child made Sam believe he could survive the journey. "He's already lasted longer than your machine said he would," Sam pointed out. "Maybe he's stronger than we think." Up in orbit, Commander Vextar watched this new development with interest. The human child should have been dead by now, but somehow he was still alive. The Zephyrian computers could not explain how an infant could survive exposure to such extreme cold for so long. "Scan the human infant again," Vextar ordered. The results showed impossible readings. The baby's heart rate was abnormally slow but steady. His body temperature was lower than should be survivable, but his organs continued to function. Most puzzling of all, his brain activity was higher than normal for a human infant. "The child appears to be adapting to the hostile environment," reported the science officer. Vextar leaned forward in his command chair. This was not the behavior they expected from humans. According to their research, humans were supposed to be weak and unable to survive in harsh conditions. Yet this infant was doing exactly that. Back in the Morrison house, Sam prepared to leave. He gathered supplies and made a warm nest for Luke inside his coat. The baby seemed to understand that they were going on a journey. His small fingers gripped Sam's shirt with surprising strength. "If you change your mind about coming with us," Sam told the Morrisons, "the medical station has room for families." Jake shook his head, but Mary looked thoughtful. Sam could see that she wanted to come, but she was too weak to travel, and Jake was too stubborn to abandon his ranch. Sam mounted his horse with Luke secured inside his coat. The baby was warm against his chest, and Sam could feel the small heart beating steadily. As they rode away from the Morrison ranch, Sam made a promise. To the child he now considered his son. "I'll get you somewhere safe, Luke, no matter what it takes." Sam Rivers rode through the storm with Luke pressed against his chest. The baby should have died a dozen times during their first day of travel, but somehow he kept breathing. Every time Sam checked on him, Luke's eyes were open and alert, watching the world around him with unusual interest. The journey to the medical station normally took 3 days in good weather. In this blizzard, with alien patrols in the area, it could take a week or more. Sam knew they were running out of time, but Luke seemed to be getting stronger instead of weaker. On the second day, something remarkable happened. Sam woke up to find that Luke's breathing had become deeper and more regular. His skin was no longer blue and his body temperature felt normal. The baby who should have died in the snow was adapting to conditions that would kill most adults. Sam checked his supplies and realized they were running low on everything. The horse was tired and needed rest, but stopping for too long meant risking capture by alien scouts. Sam had seen what the Zephyrians did to human prisoners, and he would die before he let them take Luke. As they traveled through a narrow canyon, Sam's horse suddenly stopped and snorted nervously. Sam looked around and saw movement in the rocks. Above, 3 Zephyrian soldiers were watching them from behind cover. Their silver armor gleamed in the pale light, and their weapons were already aimed at Sam and Luke. "Human, you will surrender the infant for examination," one of the aliens called down in broken English. Sam's hand moved to his rifle, but he knew he could not fight 3 trained soldiers while protecting a baby. Luke seemed to sense the danger. The infant became very still and quiet, as if he understood they needed to be invisible. "The child is sick," Sam called back. "He'll die if you take him." "Our medical scanners show unusual readings," the Zephyrian replied. "The infant must be studied." Sam spurred his horse forward and rode hard down the canyon. Laser blasts lit up the rocks around them, but somehow none of them hit their target. Sam rode like his life depended on it, which it did. Behind him, he could hear the aliens shouting orders and giving chase. The chase lasted for 2 hours through rocky terrain that Sam knew better than the aliens did. He used every trick he had learned in years of frontier living. Finally, he lost them in a maze of small canyons that looked identical from above. When Sam was sure they were safe, he stopped to rest and check on Luke. The baby was not only unhurt, but he seemed excited by the adventure. His eyes were bright and he made small sounds that might have been laughter. "You liked that, didn't you?" Sam asked. Most babies would be crying after a ride like that. Up in orbit, Commander Vextar was receiving reports from his ground team. The human infant had survived another impossible situation. The child should have been crying and alerting their position, but instead he had remained silent during the entire chase. "The infant appears to have tactical awareness beyond normal human capacity," the ground team leader reported. Vextar ordered continuous scanning of the human child. The readings were becoming more unusual by the hour. Luke's neural activity was off the charts and his body was showing adaptations that should take generations to develop. "Begin active scans," Vextar commanded. "I want to know everything about this human infant." The Zephyrian scanners focused on Luke from orbit, analyzing every cell in his body. What they found defied all their understanding of human biology. The child was evolving in real time, adapting to every challenge he faced. Sam felt a strange tingling sensation and looked up at the sky. He could not see the alien ship through the clouds, but he sensed they were being watched. Luke seemed to feel it too. The baby turned his head toward the sky and made a sound that was almost like a growl. "They're not giving up, are they?" Sam said. "Well, neither are we." By the 3rd day, Sam realized that Luke was not just surviving the journey. He was thriving. The baby's appetite was enormous, and he seemed to grow stronger every hour. His movements were more coordinated than any newborn Sam had ever seen. They finally reached the medical station. Sam was exhausted, but Luke seemed ready for anything. The station was a small facility that served several frontier settlements. Dr. Helen Carter was the only doctor for hundreds of miles. Sam burst through the station doors carrying Luke. "Doctor, I need help with this baby." Dr. Carter looked at the infant and immediately saw that something was unusual about him. Luke's eyes followed her movements with an intelligence that was startling in a newborn. His grip strength was remarkable, and his reflexes were faster than normal. "How old is this child?" she asked. 4 days, Sam replied. "His parents thought he was defective and left him to die." Dr. Carter ran every test she could think of. The results were impossible to believe. Luke's cardiovascular system was more efficient than any human she had ever examined. His nervous system showed enhancements that should not exist. His brain structure was different in ways that could only be described as improvements. "This isn't a defective child," she told Sam. "This is evolution in action." She explained that Luke's unusual features were not birth defects but adaptations. His enlarged heart could process oxygen more efficiently in low-atmosphere environments. His modified nervous system could withstand temperature extremes that would kill normal humans. His enhanced brain could process information faster and more accurately than typical human minds. "He's perfectly designed for life on frontier worlds," Dr. Carter said. "The conditions that should have killed him made him stronger instead." Sam looked down at Luke, who was staring back at him with those remarkable eyes. The baby seemed to understand every word they were saying. His small hand reached up and gripped Sam's finger with surprising strength. "So he's going to be all right?" Sam asked. "All right?" Dr. Carter laughed. "Sam, this child is going to be extraordinary." Their celebration was interrupted by an alarm. Through the station windows they could see Zephyrian ships descending from the clouds. The aliens had found them, and they were not taking any chances this time. 3 full cruisers surrounded the medical station. Commander Vextar's voice came through the station's communication system. "Humans, you will surrender the infant immediately. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your facility." Sam held Luke closer and looked at Dr. Carter. "Is there another way out of here?" She shook her head. "We're surrounded." Luke made a small sound and looked up at Sam with complete trust. The baby had survived everything the universe had thrown at him so far, but this might be the end of their journey. Sam would not let the aliens take his son without a fight, even if it meant they both died trying to escape. "Get ready, Luke," Sam whispered. "This is going to be the biggest adventure yet." Dr. Helen Carter stared at the test results in amazement. Everything she thought she knew about human biology was wrong. Luke was not just healthy, he was perfect. His body had been designed by evolution itself to survive in the harsh environments of frontier worlds. "Look at this," she told Sam, pointing to the scanner readings. "His lung capacity is 30% larger than normal. His blood carries oxygen more efficiently than any human I've ever seen. His heart beats slower but pumps more blood with each beat." Sam watched Luke sleeping peacefully in the medical bed. The baby looked so small and fragile, but the machines showed he was anything but weak. His vital signs were stronger than most adults. "What about his brain?" Sam asked. "He seems to understand things that a 4-day-old baby shouldn't." Dr. Carter pulled up the neural scans. "His brain structure is remarkable. The connections between different regions are much more developed than normal. He's processing information at a rate that should be impossible for an infant." Outside the medical station, the Zephyrian ships had landed and troops were surrounding the building. Commander Vextar himself had come down to oversee the capture of the unusual human child. His scientific curiosity had overcome his military caution. Through the windows, Sam could see alien soldiers setting up equipment. Their silver armor gleamed in the pale sunlight, and their weapons were trained on every exit. There was no way to escape without a fight. "We need to get Luke out of here," Sam said. Dr. Carter shook her head. "Where can we go? They've got us surrounded." Luke opened his eyes and looked directly at the window where the aliens were visible. The baby's expression was calm and alert, as if he understood exactly what was happening. He made a small sound that was almost like he was trying to communicate. "He knows they're there," Sam said in wonder. "That's impossible," Dr. Carter replied. "He's only 4 days old." But even as she said it, she could see that Luke was tracking the movement of the alien soldiers outside. His eyes followed them with an awareness that should not exist in such a young child. The baby seemed to be studying their tactics and equipment. The station's communication system crackled to life. Commander Vextar's voice filled the room. "Humans, you have 1 hour to surrender the infant. If you refuse, we will take him by force." Sam picked up Luke and held him close. "What do they want with him?" Dr. Carter pulled up her research files. "I think they've been scanning him from orbit. They must have detected the same unusual readings that I'm seeing." She showed Sam the data she had collected. Luke's cellular structure was unlike anything in the medical databases. His DNA showed markers that indicated rapid adaptation to environmental stresses. His immune system was already more advanced than most adult humans. "He's not just adapted to frontier conditions," she explained. "He's evolved to thrive in environments that would kill normal humans. High radiation, low oxygen, extreme temperatures. His body can handle all of it." Sam understood immediately why the aliens wanted Luke. They think they can use him to colonize worlds they can't survive on themselves. "Or worse," Dr. Carter said. "They might want to study him to understand how humans are adapting to harsh worlds. That information could help them develop weapons specifically designed to kill frontier colonists." Luke began to fuss, and Sam rocked him gently. The baby calmed down and looked up at Sam with complete trust. In those 4 days, Luke had already bonded with the man who had saved his life. Sam would die before he let anyone hurt his son. The medical station staff consisted of only 12 people. Dr. Carter was the senior officer, and the others were nurses, technicians, and support personnel. None of them were soldiers, but all of them were frontier people who understood what was at stake. "We can't fight them," said Nurse Betty Walsh. "They've got advanced weapons and armor." "We can't let them take Luke either," replied Technician Carl Brown. "That baby represents hope for all of us out here on the frontier." Dr. Carter had been studying the alien positions through her security cameras. "They're being careful not to damage the station. They want Luke alive and unharmed." Sam looked at the sleeping baby in his arms. Luke had survived being left to die in a blizzard. He had thrived during a dangerous journey through alien territory. He had adapted to conditions that should have killed him a dozen times over. Maybe he could survive this too. "What if we don't run?" Sam said suddenly. "What if we make them come to us?" Dr. Carter frowned. "What do you mean?" "Luke isn't the only special thing here," Sam explained. "This is a frontier medical station. You've been treating adapted humans for years. You must have research data on how we're changing." She nodded slowly. "I've been documenting unusual cases for the past 5 years. Enhanced reflexes, improved vision, better resistance to disease and radiation. I thought they were just individual mutations. But they're not," Sam realized. "They're all part of the same process. Humans are evolving to survive in space, and Luke is just the most advanced example." Through the window, they could see Commander Vextar approaching the station with a small group of guards. The alien commander was tall and imposing, with scales that shifted color in the light. His weapons were visible but not drawn, suggesting he wanted to negotiate rather than fight. Luke opened his eyes again and looked toward the approaching aliens. This time he made a sound that was definitely not random baby noise. It was a pattern of tones that seemed almost like language. "Did he just try to talk?" Dr. Carter asked. "That sounded like communication," Sam agreed. "But that's impossible at his age." The baby looked up at Sam and repeated the same pattern of sounds. Then he turned toward the window and made different tones, as if he was trying to tell them something about the aliens outside. Dr. Carter's scanner began beeping rapidly. His brain activity just spiked. He's processing information at an incredible rate. Sam held Luke closer and walked to the window. Commander Vextar had stopped just outside the entrance. The alien was looking directly at them through the glass, and his expression showed surprise and something that might have been respect. "He can see how special Luke is," Sam said. "That's why he came down here himself instead of sending soldiers." The communication system activated again. "Human called Sam Rivers," Vextar's voice said clearly. "I wish to speak with you about the infant. Will you meet with me under a flag of truce?" Sam looked down at Luke, who was watching everything with those impossibly alert eyes. The baby seemed to nod as if he understood and approved of the meeting. "All right," Sam said to the communication device. "But the baby stays with me, and any trick means we fight to the death." "Agreed," Vextar replied. "You have my word as a commander of the Empire." As Sam prepared to face the alien leader, he realized that everything was about to change. Luke was not just one special baby. He was the future of humanity itself. Sam Rivers walked out of the medical station with Luke secured in a carrier against his chest. The baby was alert and calm, his unusual eyes taking in everything around them. Commander Vextar stood waiting in the middle of the landing platform, flanked by 2 guards but with his weapons holstered. The Zephyrian commander was impressive up close. He stood nearly 7 feet tall with scaled skin that shifted from silver to deep blue depending on the light. His eyes were large and intelligent, and when he looked at Luke, Sam could see genuine fascination rather than just military interest. "You are the human who saved this infant from certain death," Vextar said in accented but clear English. "I'm the human who gave him a chance to live," Sam replied. "What do you want with him?" Vextar gestured toward Luke. "Our scanners have been monitoring this child since his birth. His survival capabilities are beyond anything we have recorded in human subjects. We require him for scientific study." He's not a laboratory specimen, Sam said firmly. He's my son. Your attachment is understandable, but irrelevant, Vextar replied. This infant represents evolutionary advancement that could benefit the Empire. His genetic material and neural patterns must be analyzed. Sam held Luke closer. You mean you want to dissect him? We would ensure his survival during our research, Vextar said, though his tone suggested this was not a primary concern. Luke made one of his unusual communication sounds, a pattern of tones that seemed directed at the alien commander. Vextar's head snapped toward the baby, his eyes widening in surprise. The infant just attempted to communicate in a harmonic pattern, similar to our own language structure, Vextar said in amazement. Luke's special, Sam agreed, but that doesn't give you the right to take him. Vextar studied Sam carefully. You would fight our entire battle group to protect one infant? Yes, Sam said without hesitation. Even though you would certainly die. Especially then, Sam replied. That's what fathers do. The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. In Zephyrian culture, family bonds were considered weakness that made soldiers unreliable, but he had observed enough human behavior to know that their protective instincts could make them incredibly dangerous when cornered. Your species fascinates me, Vextar admitted. You claim to value life, yet you abandon defective offspring. You speak of love, yet you wage constant wars among yourselves. Maybe we're not as simple as your computers think, Sam suggested. Luke made another series of sounds, this time seeming to mimic some of the tonal patterns of Vextar's speech. The baby was learning alien language structure after only minutes of exposure. Remarkable, Vextar breathed. His cognitive development is accelerated beyond any parameters in our databases. Dr. Carter's voice came through Sam's radio communicator. Sam, Luke's brain activity is off the charts. He's not just listening to the conversation, he's analyzing the language patterns in real time. Vextar heard the transmission and looked even more interested. Doctor, what other capabilities has the infant demonstrated? Temperature regulation, enhanced reflexes, improved oxygen processing, accelerated healing, Dr. Carter replied. He's adapted to survive in conditions that would kill normal humans. These adaptations would be invaluable for colonizing hostile worlds, Vextar said. Surely you understand the scientific importance of studying this child. Sam shook his head. I understand that you see him as a tool instead of a person. In the Empire, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the individual, Vextar explained. On the frontier, we believe every individual has value, Sam countered. Luke looked up at Sam and made a soft sound that clearly meant comfort and trust. Then he turned toward Vextar and made a different sound that somehow conveyed challenge and defiance. The baby seemed to understand exactly what was being discussed. Vextar stepped closer, studying Luke with scientific fascination. I have never encountered an infant with such advanced awareness. His potential is extraordinary. His potential is his own, Sam said, not yours to exploit. The alien commander reached slowly toward Luke, but stopped when Sam shifted defensively. I mean no immediate harm. I simply wish to observe his reactions. Observe from where you are, Sam warned. Vextar smiled, which was a disturbing expression on his scaled features. You would challenge a Zephyrian commander to protect this child? I'd challenge anyone to protect him, Sam replied. Even in single combat? Sam's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Vextar's expression became more serious. There is an ancient law in the Empire. When honor is disputed, any individual may demand trial by combat. If you defeat me in single combat, your claim to the infant would be recognized under imperial law. And if I lose? Then the child becomes property of the Empire, Vextar said simply. Sam looked down at Luke, who was watching the conversation with those impossibly intelligent eyes. The baby seemed to understand the stakes, and somehow he appeared calm and confident. Dr. Carter's voice crackled through the radio again. Sam, that's not a fair fight. He's got advanced technology and superior physical capabilities. The combat would be conducted under traditional rules, Vextar said, having heard the transmission. No advanced technology, no weapons beyond what humans might naturally possess. Sam thought about his options. Fighting was almost certainly suicide, but surrendering Luke to alien experimentation was worse than death. At least in single combat, Luke would have a chance if Sam somehow managed to win. "What are the terms?" Sam asked. Vextar gestured toward the landing platform. "We fight here, in the storm, with whatever natural weapons we choose. The combat continues until one of us yields, or dies. And you'll honor the results regardless of who wins. You have my word as a commander of the Zephyrian Empire," Vextar replied formally. Sam looked around at the medical station staff watching through the windows. 12 people who had devoted their lives to helping others, and now they were trapped in an impossible situation. Luke made another soft sound and reached up to touch Sam's face with one small hand. "All right," Sam said finally. "But first I want to make sure Luke is safe during the fight." Dr. Carter came out of the station and carefully took Luke from Sam's arms. The baby fussed for a moment, then settled when he realized he could still see Sam clearly. Vextar began removing his armor and weapons, leaving only his natural scales and claws for protection. Sam took off his heavy coat but kept his boots and gloves. The storm was still raging and the wind cut through his clothes like ice. "You realize this is suicide," Dr. Carter said quietly. Sam smiled grimly. "Maybe, but Luke's shown me that humans are tougher than we look." As the two fighters faced each other on the storm-swept platform, Luke watched from Dr. Carter's arms with complete attention. The baby seemed to understand that everything depended on the next few minutes. The duel between Sam Rivers and Commander Vextar lasted 18 minutes. For the first 10 minutes it seemed like the alien would win easily. Vextar was stronger, faster, and his scaled skin provided natural armor against Sam's attacks. But Sam had something the commander did not expect: the desperate fury of a father protecting his child. Sam used every dirty trick he had learned in years of frontier survival. He threw snow in Vextar's eyes, used the wind to mask his movements, and fought with the kind of savage determination that comes from having nothing left to lose. When Vextar's claws raked across Sam's ribs, Sam grabbed the alien's arm and used his own body weight to throw the commander into the metal wall of the medical station. The turning point came when Sam realized that Vextar was having trouble with the cold. Zephyrians were adapted for warmer climates, and the freezing storm was affecting the commander's reflexes. Sam began using the environment as a weapon, forcing the fight into areas where ice made footing treacherous and wind made it hard for Vextar to maintain his balance. In the final moments, both fighters were exhausted and bleeding. Vextar made one last desperate charge, but Sam sidestepped at the last second and the alien commander slipped on a patch of ice. Before Vextar could recover, Sam had his knife at the commander's throat. "Yield!" Sam gasped, his own legs barely holding him upright. Vextar looked up at the human who had defeated him through pure stubborn courage. "I yield," he said formally. "The infant remains under your protection." Dr. Carter rushed forward with Luke, who had watched the entire fight. With those remarkable eyes, the baby seemed pleased with the outcome, making soft sounds of approval as Sam held him with shaking hands. Commander Vextar stood slowly, his pride wounded, but his honor intact. "You fight like no human I have encountered before," he told Sam. "Fight like a father," Sam replied. The alien commander nodded slowly. "Perhaps we have underestimated your species." Word of the duel spread through Zephyrian communication networks within hours. The story of a primitive human cowboy defeating an imperial commander in single combat challenged everything the Empire believed about human capabilities. Other commanders began reporting similar incidents where humans had shown unexpected courage and resilience. On frontier worlds across human space, colonists heard about Sam Rivers and the baby he had saved from the snow. The story grew with each telling, becoming a symbol of human determination to protect the weak and fight against impossible odds. Parents looked at their own unusual children with new eyes, wondering if what they had thought were defects might actually be gifts. Luke became the center of a growing movement of adapted humans. Dr. Carter's research showed that children born on frontier worlds were developing enhanced capabilities at an increasing rate: better reflexes, improved resistance to radiation and disease, and, most remarkably, enhanced cognitive abilities that allowed them to learn and adapt faster than previous generations. The Morrison Ranch became an unexpected pilgrimage site. Jake Morrison, filled with regret over abandoning his son, began taking in families with unusual children. He worked tirelessly to make up for his moment of weakness, turning his ranch into a sanctuary for those who had been rejected by their communities. Mary Morrison never fully forgave her husband, but she threw herself into caring for the adapted children who came to the ranch. She became known throughout the region as a fierce advocate for accepting and nurturing human differences rather than fearing them. Sam established a school near the medical station where adapted children could learn to use their abilities safely. Luke, now 6 months old, was already showing signs of remarkable intelligence and physical coordination. He could sit up unsupported, his eyes tracked complex movements with perfect precision, and he had begun making sounds that seemed to follow grammatical patterns. The Zephyrian Empire found itself facing a crisis of confidence. Reports from across the frontier showed humans adapting to challenges faster than any species in recorded history. Children who should have died in harsh environments were not only surviving but thriving. Human colonies that should have failed were becoming more successful with each generation. Commander Vextar, despite his defeat, had gained new respect for human potential. He began filing reports that contradicted the Empire's assumptions about human weakness and primitive nature. His superiors were not pleased with these assessments. "You claim that humans are becoming more dangerous, not less," said High Command during a secure transmission. "Your defeat has compromised your judgment." "My defeat opened my eyes," Vextar replied. "We have been studying humans as if they were a static species, but they are evolving rapidly. Each generation is more adapted to frontier conditions than the last." The Empire's response was to accelerate their invasion timeline. If humans were becoming stronger, then they needed to be conquered before they became too powerful to control. Massive fleets began moving toward human space, intending to crush the growing resistance before it could mature. But the Empire had made a critical miscalculation. They still thought of humans as individuals rather than as part of a collective species consciousness. When they attacked one human settlement, news of the assault spread instantly to every other colony. When they tried to intimidate one world, 10 others began preparing defenses. Luke, now walking and beginning to speak in complex sentences, seemed to understand the approaching danger. At barely 1 year old, he was demonstrating abilities that amazed even Dr. Carter. He could solve puzzles meant for older children. His reflexes were faster than most adults, and he seemed to have an intuitive understanding of technology and tactics. "He's not just adapted to survive on frontier worlds," Dr. Carter explained to Sam. "He's adapted to help his species survive as a whole. His intelligence isn't just individual, it's collective." Sam watched Luke playing with other adapted children and saw something that gave him hope. These children worked together naturally, sharing information and solving problems as a group. They were not just smarter or stronger than previous generations, they were more cooperative. When the Zephyrian invasion fleet finally arrived at human space, they found an enemy unlike anything in their tactical databases. Human colonies that should have panicked instead coordinated their defenses with military precision. Children who should have been helpless became invaluable sources of tactical intelligence and technological innovation. The Empire had prepared to fight humans as they had always been. Instead, they found themselves facing humans as they were becoming. The species that had once abandoned their weak was now fiercely protective of every member. The people who had struggled to survive in harsh environments were now thriving in conditions that killed other species. And at the center of it all was a child who had been left to die in the snow, saved by a cowboy who refused to accept that being different meant being worthless. Luke had become more than just a symbol of human adaptation. He had become proof that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their refusal to abandon hope even in the darkest circumstances. The war that followed would determine not just the fate of human civilization, but the future of evolution itself in the galaxy. 5 years had passed since Sam Rivers pulled a dying baby from the snow behind Jake Morrison's barn. Luke was now a remarkable child who could outthink most adults and move with the grace of someone twice his age. His bright eyes held depths of understanding that seemed impossible for someone so young, and when he spoke, even hardened frontier veterans stopped to listen. The sanctuary that Sam had built around the medical station had grown into a thriving community. Hundreds of adapted children lived there now, learning to use their enhanced abilities while helping to develop new technologies and survival techniques. Dr. Carter had documented abilities that should not exist. Children who could see in near darkness, survive in thin atmospheres, and process complex information at superhuman speeds. Luke had become the unofficial leader of these children, though he was still only 5 years old. His ability to understand and coordinate with others was remarkable. When new children arrived, confused and frightened by their differences, Luke would spend time with them, helping them understand that their abilities were gifts rather than curses. Every person is special in their own way, Luke would tell the newcomers in his clear, mature voice. We just happen to be special in ways that help us survive where others cannot. The Morrison Ranch had transformed as well. Jake Morrison worked from dawn to dusk to care for the families who came seeking shelter for their unusual children. The man who had once abandoned his own son now dedicated his life to ensuring that no child would ever be rejected for being different. Mary Morrison had become a fierce advocate for adapted children throughout the region. She traveled from settlement to settlement, teaching parents to recognize and nurture the special abilities their children might possess. Her message was simple, but powerful. Humanity was evolving, and those who seemed weak might actually be the strongest of all. The Zephyrian Empire's invasion of human space had begun 2 years earlier, but it was not going according to their plans. The Empire's tactical computers had calculated that human resistance would collapse within months. Instead, the war had become a grinding campaign where every human settlement seemed to fight with impossible determination and unexpected capability. Commander Vextar, now serving as a strategic advisor despite his earlier defeat, filed report after report trying to explain the situation to his superiors. Human colonies that should have fallen in days were holding out for months. Children who should have been helpless burdens were contributing tactical insights that baffled Imperial analysts. They do not fight like any species we have encountered, Vextar explained during a high command briefing. Their psychological profile indicated they would abandon the weak to save the strong. Instead, they protect their most vulnerable members with fanatical devotion. Perhaps our psychological analysis was incomplete, suggested the strategic planning director. Not incomplete, Vextar replied. Obsolete. The humans we studied 5 years ago are not the same species we are fighting today. The truth was that humanity was changing faster than anyone had imagined possible. The stress of the invasion had accelerated the evolutionary process. Children born during the war showed even more dramatic adaptations than previous generations. They could coordinate complex activities without verbal communication, solve technical problems through intuitive understanding, and demonstrate courage that inspired their elders to impossible acts of heroism. At the sanctuary, Luke spent his days working with Dr. Carter to understand what was happening to his species. At 5 years old, he could read technical manuals, analyze genetic data, and propose solutions to problems that had stumped adult scientists. We are becoming something new, Luke told Dr. Carter during one of their research sessions. Not just individually, but as a whole species. Dr. Carter nodded, though she was still amazed to be having such conversations with a child. Your generation seems to share knowledge and insights in ways we don't fully understand. Luke looked up from the genetic scanner he had been operating with expert precision. It's not magic. We just process information differently. When one of us learns something important, we can share it with others through patterns and signals that adults cannot detect. This collective learning ability had become humanity's secret weapon in the war. When one colony developed a new defensive technique, word spread to other settlements almost instantly. When adapted children in one system discovered a weakness in Zephyrian technology, their peers across human space began exploiting that same weakness within days. The Empire found itself fighting an enemy that learned from every encounter and shared that knowledge at light speed. Their standard tactic of defeating isolated resistance groups one at a time was useless against humans who functioned as a collective intelligence while maintaining individual creativity and initiative. Sam. Rivers had become something of a legend throughout human space. The story of the cowboy who saved the abandoned baby and then defeated a Zephyrian commander in single combat had spread to every human world. Parents told their children about Sam and Luke as an example of human courage and determination. But Sam himself remained focused on more immediate concerns. The war was coming closer to their sanctuary, and he knew they would eventually have to fight. The adapted children under his protection were humanity's future, and he would not let the Empire destroy them. "We need to prepare for battle," Sam told the community council. "The Empire is running out of easier targets and they'll come for us eventually." Luke, who sat in on all council meetings despite his age, spoke up. "We should not wait for them to attack us here. We should take the fight to them." The adults in the room looked surprised. Luke rarely spoke during strategic discussions, preferring to observe and learn. "What do you mean?" asked Dr. Carter. Luke stood and walked to the holographic display showing Zephyrian fleet positions. "They expect us to defend our homes and wait for them to come to us. But we are adapted for harsh environments and difficult conditions. We can survive in places they cannot." He manipulated the display to show Imperial supply lines and support bases. "Their strength depends on their technology and supply networks. If we attack their weak points instead of meeting their strong points, we can disrupt their entire invasion." Sam looked at the tactical analysis his 5-year-old son had created and realized it was brilliant. The boy was thinking 3 steps ahead of both human and alien military commanders. "You want us to become raiders," Sam said. "I want us to become what we have always been," Luke replied. "Survivors who adapt to any challenge and overcome any obstacle." The plan that emerged from that meeting would change the course of the war. Instead of waiting passively for the Empire to attack their sanctuary, the adapted humans began launching strikes against Imperial infrastructure across multiple systems. They used their enhanced abilities to survive in environments where Zephyrian troops could not operate effectively. The psychological impact on the Empire was enormous. Their invasion fleets found themselves constantly looking over their shoulders, never sure when or where the next human attack would come. Imperial commanders who had once felt invincible began making defensive decisions based on fear rather than tactical advantage. Commander Vextar watched the shift in Imperial strategy with a mixture of admiration and concern. "The humans have stopped reacting to our moves and started forcing us to react to theirs," he reported. "They are no longer the prey in this conflict." The final phase of the war was about to begin, and for the first time since the invasion started, Vextar was not certain his empire would win. The species that had once abandoned a defective baby in the snow had evolved into something that refused to abandon anyone or anything. Their greatest weakness had become their greatest strength, and the galaxy would never be the same. The war between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire ended not with a final battle, but with a slow realization that conquest was impossible. After 3 years of fighting an enemy that grew stronger with every challenge, the Empire quietly began, withdrawing from human space. The cost of the invasion had become greater than any possible benefit, and Imperial commanders found themselves facing an enemy that simply refused to be defeated. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, as it prepared to leave the human frontier forever. He had spent 5 years studying this remarkable species, and he finally understood why they were so dangerous. Humans did not just adapt to challenges, they transformed challenges into advantages. "Shall I file the final report, Commander?" asked his aide. "Yes," Vextar replied. "Classification: species incompatible with Imperial conquest. Recommendation: avoid all future contact." But Vextar had a secret that he had not reported to his superiors. He had been in communication with Sam Rivers and the adapted human community for months, sharing information that had helped end the war more quickly. The defeat at the medical station 5 years earlier had changed more than just his tactical assessment of humans. It had changed his understanding of what honor meant. 3 months after the last Imperial ship left human space, a small civilian, vessel arrived at Sam's sanctuary. Commander Vextar emerged alone, carrying only personal belongings and a formal request for asylum. "I no longer serve an empire that considers strength more important than honor," he told Sam as they met on the same landing platform where they had fought years before. Sam looked at the alien who had once tried to take Luke for experimentation. "What makes you think we'll trust you?" "Because you are the species that saved a child others would have abandoned," Vextar replied. "Because you fought to protect the weak when the strong would have surrendered them. Because you have proven that your greatest strength is not your ability to destroy your enemies, but your ability to transform them into allies." Luke, now 8 years old and tall for his age, stepped forward. His remarkable eyes studied Vextar with an intensity that made the former Imperial commander feel exposed and vulnerable. "He is telling the truth," Luke said simply. "He wants to learn from us, not conquer us." Dr. Carter had continued her research throughout the war, documenting the accelerating evolution of human capabilities. Her findings showed that the adapted children were not just isolated mutations but the beginning of a species-wide transformation. Children born during the war showed even more remarkable abilities, and the trend was accelerating with each generation. "We are witnessing the emergence of a new kind of human," she explained to a gathering of scientists from across human space. "One adapted not just for survival in harsh environments, but for thriving in conditions that would destroy previous generations." The sanctuary had grown into a major research center where adapted humans worked alongside traditional scientists to understand and guide their own evolution. Luke had become the unofficial coordinator of research efforts, his unique abilities allowing him to synthesize information from multiple sources and see patterns that others missed. At 8 years old, Luke could process complex scientific data, coordinate activities across multiple star systems, and demonstrate physical capabilities that bordered on the superhuman. But more importantly, he had retained the compassion and wisdom that Sam had taught him during their early years together. "Intelligence without kindness is just another form of brutality," Luke would tell the younger children who looked up to him. "Our abilities are gifts that should be used to help others, not to dominate them." The Morrison Ranch had become a training center where adapted children learned to use their abilities responsibly. Jake Morrison, now in his 60s, had found peace in his work with children who had been rejected by their families. His transformation from the man who abandoned his son to someone who dedicated his life to helping unusual children had become another part of the growing legend. Mary Morrison had established schools throughout human space where adapted children could learn alongside traditional humans. Her philosophy was simple: diversity made humanity stronger, and differences should be celebrated rather than feared. "Every child has something special to offer," she would tell parents struggling to accept their unusual offspring. "Our job is not to make them normal, but to help them become the best version of themselves." The end of the war had brought unexpected changes to human society. The adapted children who had helped win the conflict were now being recognized as leaders and innovators. Their ability to think differently and solve problems in new ways made them valuable contributors to every aspect of human civilization. Luke had begun working on projects that seemed impossible to traditional human thinking. He coordinated efforts to terraform hostile worlds, developed new technologies that worked in harmony with natural systems, and helped establish colonies in star systems that had been considered uninhabitable. "We are not trying to conquer the galaxy," Luke explained to a gathering of human leaders. "We are trying to find our place in it." Commander Vextar had integrated into the sanctuary community with surprising ease. His military experience and knowledge of Imperial technology proved valuable. But more importantly, his perspective as a former enemy helped humans understand how other species might view their rapid evolution. "Most species in the galaxy change slowly over thousands of generations," Vextar explained during a research meeting. "You have achieved more evolutionary advancement in 10 years than most species manage in 10 millennia. Other civilizations will find this both fascinating and frightening." Luke nodded thoughtfully. "That's why we need to be careful about how we present ourselves. We want to be seen as partners, not threats." The adapted humans had begun reaching out to other species. offering their unique abilities to help solve problems that had seemed impossible. Their success rate was remarkable. Worlds that had been written off as uninhabitable became thriving colonies, and technological challenges that had stumped other civilizations were solved through innovative thinking. 10 years after Sam Rivers had pulled a dying baby from the snow, Luke stood before the newly established Galactic Council as humanity's youngest ambassador. At 18, he looked like a young adult but spoke with wisdom that impressed beings who had lived for centuries. Humanity offers partnership, not domination, Luke told the assembled representatives. We have learned that our greatest strength comes not from our individual abilities, but from our willingness to help others overcome their challenges. The Council voted unanimously to accept humanity as a full member, recognizing them as a stabilizing force in galactic politics. The species that had once been considered primitive and warlike had become mediators and problem solvers. Sam Rivers watched his son address the Galactic Council through a live transmission and felt a pride that went beyond words. The baby he had saved from the snow had grown into someone who could save entire civilizations. The child who had been abandoned for being different had become a bridge between species who had never learned to work together. In the end, the story that began with a rancher's moment of despair had become humanity's greatest triumph. The species that had learned to protect their weakest members had become strong enough to protect everyone. The people who refused to abandon hope had become hope itself, for a galaxy that desperately needed it. Luke's final words to the Galactic Council summarized everything humanity had learned during their remarkable transformation. We are all different, and that is what makes us stronger together than we could ever be alone. The new frontier was not a place but a way of thinking, one where differences were celebrated, challenges became opportunities, and the impossible became merely the starting point for something even better.